people would push you, maybe maybe you'll be looking pretty. We need to see that. I like having conversations. I like the back and forth. I like engaging with people mentally.
Also challenging others.
And challenging others and sort of putting people on the spot. Yeah. I enjoy that too. So yeah, maybe I could have been a lawyer.
Fathiya, welcome to Sango Insights.
Thank you very much. It's Fathiya actually.
Fathiya.
Thank you very much for the invite.
Which media is this? Is this Al-Shabaab media?
Can you imagine? I think that is absolutely rude. You understand?
Yeah.
Because people have already formed a perception. As a journalist, I'm not going to cover that word and say that he said garbage, he said garbage.
Yeah.
That's truth, right? So you address it as is. This is what he said. One of the challenges is, I won't lie to you, being a young Muslim journalist, female journalist, a lot of the times, I guess people don't take you so seriously. One of the things that I think is a struggle, you know.
What is your relationship with money?
I used to think I'm a spendthrift at some point in my life, but then I decided to do some financial literacy classes. So I joined Centonomy. I don't know if you know Centonomy.
Oh, I know.
So I did Centonomy.
Waidaka.
Yes, I really enjoyed these classes. Yeah. So I did Centonomy for 3 months, graduated. I really wanted to learn financial literacy. So that really helped me in terms of like planning my money, what to use, what's essential, what not to use. So those classes really helped me. I think I did it in 2022 actually.
Now today I have an amazing guest. The guest is none other than Fathiya. We'll give chance to Fathiya to introduce herself. Fathiya, welcome to Sango Insights.
Thank you very much. It's Fathiya actually.
Fathiya.
Thank you very much for the invite.
Yeah.
I'm excited to be here and have the conversation.
Yeah.
My name is Fathiya Mohammed Noor. I'm a journalist by profession. I work as a commissioning editor at China Global Television Network for Faces of Africa, which is a documentary show. And I'm excited to be here, to be having a chat with you.
Thank you for also giving us your time. Mm-hmm. And journalism is a profound career, is an ideal career. Mm-hmm. A lot of people want to be journalists. How did you start your journey of becoming a journalist, Fathiya?
Right. First things first, I didn't think I'd be a journalist. Actually, growing up, I thought I'd be a lawyer.
Wow.
So one day, after I finished high school, my dad kind of suggested, well, what do you think of journalism? It's being offered at USIU. Would you be interested? And I thought, yeah, why not? Now, but when I look back, I've always been interested in current affairs and politics, especially geopolitics or things that are happening in international spaces. And so I thought, why not? Let me give it a shot. And so I went to school. I went to USIU and I did my undergraduate there. I did my bachelor's in journalism. I concentrated on broadcast journalism, and then I did also public relations. And then after I left school, I knew what I wanted. I knew I wanted to get into broadcast, TV, precisely. Because growing up, there are people that you look up to and things that they do without knowing. Like I said, I wanted to be a lawyer, but I used to look up to specific presenters and some of the news stories that were being told by correspondents around the world. And so I thought, wow, maybe I can give this a shot. And so I started my career that way. Yeah.
I have your number. I saw you graduating the other day. What were you graduating?
Oh, yes. I just completed my master's.
Wow.
Still at USIU, by the way. But I did international relations. So specifically, I focused on diplomacy and foreign policy. You see, international relations and journalism, they kind of go hand in hand because it's what's happening around the world. And so I thought, what a better opportunity to do my master's in something different than journalism. So yeah, I've done my master's now in IR and I'm excited to see what it will bring forth for me.
By the way, I'm also an alumni of USIU. I did my master's last year, 2024. I did master's in business administration.
Yeah.
Whom did you look up to when you were starting this career of yours? Who is that specific guy that you said, maybe I want to go through his journey?
I mean, I think if you ask that to a lot of journalists globally, they'll tell you someone like Christina Mampour, because you're thinking about being a war correspondent, being outside and, you know, gathering stories as it's happening. So of course that was a plus. I think CNN has always been very big in terms of how they do their content. But if I'm to come back to personalities here in Kenya, and I think I've said this a lot, there's a former presenter called Julie Gishuru. She,
Yeah.
do you know her?
I know Julie Kishiro.
So I grew up watching her, and I really liked her sense of presenting and the kind of stories or kind of things that she was talking about in her bulletins a lot of the time. So she's one of the people I really looked up to. Hussein Mohammed.
The current spokesperson.
Yes. So before he left also, I really enjoyed how he was very hands-on. He knows his stuff. He knew how to ask the right questions. So he's also someone I really looked up to, and someone at least I know in person. So that's exciting from that perspective. Who else did I look up to? That's interesting. Let me just mention those two. But around the world, I think even as my career grew, there was also a gentleman called Alan Kasuja. I don't think a lot of people know him. He used to work for the BBC. He just left recently, but he's Ugandan, but he used to work with the BBC in London, and he's done a lot of phenomenal stories in Africa. So he's also another person that I seriously looked at.
Fathiya, when was the first time you appeared on a television, and how did you feel when it premiered?
So you see, when I started my career, I started at CGTN, actually where I'm at right now, in 2015.
Yeah. Wow.
But that time I was just behind the scenes. A lot of the times I was just printing scripts for the presenter and doing just things here and there. But the first time I appeared on a screen as a reporter was at K24 TV. I was doing business reporting, and I was sent out to a press briefing in the morning. So usually for business, they have breakfast meetings very early in the morning. So I was sent for a particular story. After I did that particular story, I did a script, and then I went outside and I did a PTC. Now in journalism, there's something called a PTC, point to camera.
Point of camera.
So you speak into the camera. So it's like the way you write your story at the end, you kind of summarize everything you've said in your story in a way, and then you sign out with your name. So I remember the first time I signed out, I said, Fathiya Mohammed Noor, K24, Nairobi, something like that. And it was different, but it's something that I wanted to do. I was so hungry for it. I knew this is where I want to go, and this is how I want my journey to look like. From that time, it was go time, ready to go every single time.
How did your colleagues feel? How did your closest family members feel when they see you, when they saw you appearing on a television?
So you can imagine I am a firstborn of 8, right? And so I was the first person to start working. So the first time I appeared on TV, you can imagine my mom and dad were thrilled. They were excited, of course. You know, calling people, hey, my daughter's appearing on TV at this particular time, make sure you watch. There's a lot of excitement, especially from the family perspective, because they know how hard I worked to get even into TV. Because with this industry in journalism, so many people practice it, or rather study it, but getting jobs is not easy. You have to work 10 times harder to make sure that you get there. Number 2, when you're a female Muslim journalist, a lot of the time, it's not easy to get into such spaces. And I think, you know, there are very few of us. I think the numbers are growing now, which is fantastic.
I know of Jamila.
Jamila she's a trendsetter. She's said that for us.
I know of
Zainab Ismail.
Yeah.
Yes. And it's so nice to see our girls.
Nowadays, I see a young lady called Rukia Bulis.
Yes. There's so many of Muslim girls now in those spaces, and it's really lovely. So it's very encouraging to a lot of girls. But just coming back to your question, apart from my family, of course, there was a lot of, very much support, basically, from some of my colleagues, because not everybody's happy for you in a newsroom, you know. But that was the reaction, and I really appreciate it. It's built me to where I am now.
Where did you get your first intern to be a journalist?
So my first internship was at where I'm currently working, China
CGTN.
Global Television Network, CGTN. And it was a school internship. But at that particular time, it was very much a behind-the-scenes kind of role. Where I'd come in, I was working media operations, where I'd come and check the weather, you know, Nairobi, Beijing, New York, and then I'd print scripts for the anchor of the day, take it to the anchor. I'd work in the library also, like to archive material and stuff like that, which was an interesting, opportunity. I did that for 3 months. And someone advised me and said, this is good that you're doing this, but if you're interested in broadcast journalism, why don't you go back to local media? So my internship ended at CGTN, and I was now looking for opportunities. And so someone reached out to me and said, hey, K24 is looking for business interns. Would you be interested? Now, the thing is, I'm not a big business person, business reporter person. I'm not interested in like reporting business stuff because I like the political kind of content. But I said it's an opportunity, let me take it up. So then I proceeded to K24 where I did my next internship for 3 months. Yeah.
There is a challenge whereby those people who are maybe pursuing journalism and they want to graduate,
Yeah.
but when they see this media outlet, these televisions, the same faces which were there a decade ago
Yeah.
are still there, and they when they see that they got heartbroken. What advice do you have so that they may one day appear in a television?
That's a very hard question. That's a very hard question because I remember, just to relate with that, I was invited to Limuru Girls to speak to some of the students, and a student actually got up and asked me the same question. I think, media also, it's about talent, it's about strength. And especially when you're working on camera, it's sort of showbiz. So specific people, do you have specific talents? Can you speak in a certain way? Can you deliver in a certain way? Those are the specifics that people look at a lot of the times. But I want to change this a bit and tell you this, yeah? The world has changed, especially media.
Yeah.
Now, you can have your own TV station in your house, You can use your phone and broadcast whatever you want from where you are. Whether you're in your car, whether you're in a parking lot sitting somewhere, that's your own TV station. Start there. That's what I'd say.
And how has that impacted the mainstream media? Because nowadays people are getting this news instantly from maybe X platform, from Instagram, from TikTok.
Yeah.
And sometimes you may find the mainstream media is issuing this news after some hours.
Yeah.
So how has it affected the mainstream media?
Of course, it has affected mainstream media in a number of ways. Unfortunately, if you've seen now reports, media houses are now sort of retrenching and the newsrooms are shrinking.
Yeah,
I'm sure you've seen that, right?
I've seen that.
And it's happening globally, not only in Africa, but it's also happening globally. But I think we're adapting. Let me put it like that. Okay. So previously, working in a media house or a mainstream media platform, it was about breaking the news, putting the story out fast. So breaking news, this is happening here and there, But now anybody can break news from wherever they are, right? So the work of media houses now, from my perspective, is fact-checking that information, giving out accurate information that is balanced, that is truthful. Because anybody who has a phone and can say anything, you can't just necessarily take it as 100%, because it really needs to be fact-checked.
Yeah.
So for now, when it comes to media houses, it's about the story that is more accurate. It's about a story that, tells the right thing from a balanced perspective. That's the difference now in terms of where we are as a mainstream media platform. Yeah.
Fathiya, who is the most influential person you have ever interviewed as a journalist?
Let me just say the one that I believe was influential passed away, unfortunately, in 2020. So at the time I was working for BBC, I interviewed Jerry Rawlings. He was one of the former presidents of Ghana.
Wow.
And so I had gone for an assignment in Ghana, in Accra, and I got an opportunity to interview him about a couple of things. We were doing a show on misinformation. So one of the things that I asked him was about misinformation. And when you Google Jerry Rawlings, he was one of the biggest leaders, especially in Ghana. He was in the military before, like his story is rich. You can go look it up, by the way. And so he's one of the people that I believe was one of the most influential people that I interviewed just right before he died. So I interviewed him in 2019 and he passed in 2020.
Due to Corona?
No, he was just not feeling well even at the time. But I believe yes, I've interviewed a couple of people throughout my career, but him, it was a whole different experience because you're talking to him and he's telling you things from back in the day, how Ghana was back in the day, how it was fighting specific, during the Cold War era and things like that. And because I'm a student of history, I really enjoy that conversation.
And how do you balance, since that particular person is an influential person, how do you balance between asking the right question and maybe not intimidating him? Because sometimes if you ask these strict question, you can end up intimidating a person and then he walks away from your from your podcast or from your journalism or from your media outlet? How do you balance that?
I wouldn't even say it's about balancing, yeah? Everything's about facts,
Yeah.
right? So if I've done my research, I've done my homework, and I come and ask you a specific question, this means it's something that has happened or is happening. So it's a fact. So if this person decides to walk away, even as a leader, from that perspective, then you're running away from an actual fact.
Yeah.
And that is where, as a journalist, you put someone in place. I mean, one of the main roles
We
of
have
a
seen a lot
journalist...
of them walking away, by the way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
One of the main roles of journalists is to hold people accountable,
Yeah.
especially people who are in government positions,
Yeah.
when it comes to the rights of people or the voices of the people. So if someone walks away, that means that they know what they're doing is not right somewhere, right?
Yeah.
So you either pin them down, and if they walk, and it's up to them, right? Yeah.
And Fathiya,
Yeah.
what are the challenges have you undergone in your journey of journalism? What are some of the challenges?
Wow, where do I start? Oof. It looks like a very easy industry to just be on camera and just say things, but that's really not the case. As a journalist, you really need to be knowledgeable. You have to know things that are happening, okay? Because anytime you can be called on upon to say anything, right? To, if it's a breaking story or whatever that's happening. And so I think first things first, the first time I got into a proper newsroom, I think apart from what I was doing at KTN, at K24, I went to KTN as a researcher. And even at that time, I was still behind the scenes. But let me talk about the time that I think was my most challenging, which could have been the highlight of my career, honestly, because I always wanted to be a news anchor. And so I got that opportunity officially in 2022 at KTN News, and I did it for 2 years. One of the challenges is, I won't lie to you, being a young Muslim journalist, female journalist, a lot of the times, I guess people don't take you so seriously. One of the things that I think is a struggle, you know?
Let me interfere. There was this guy, Professor, I think now he has died. He was a CS of education, and then there was a Muslim lady who was interviewing him. I'm like, which media is this? Is this Al-Shabaab media?
Can you imagine? I think that is absolutely rude. You understand?
Yeah.
Because people have already formed a perception that, you know, this one, what is she going to ask me anyway? But that's some of the challenges that you get is something like that, you know, and that's why you need to be always prepared. And you can only be prepared if you have the knowledge. You've got to know your stuff. You've got to know your stuff. You've got to read. You've got to research, you know, because I don't think it's nice if you're in a position like that and you're just blank, blonde. Anything happens and you have no idea of what's happening. Because a couple of times when I was on air, there were breaking stories. For instance, I think the Pope had just passed, I think, in 2023. I don't remember, but the Pope had just passed. And I had already read a different story. I was just on my phone, and then I look up and I'm seeing breaking news, the Pope has died, and I'm the one who's in studio. So people are expecting me to break that story and have some facts. So how do you react from that perspective? So hapo kwa hapo, you know, I'll break the story, but I have to be quick in my search. I'm like, okay, so which Pope has died? Why did he, what? You know, have your facts right. It's about being on your feet. Pop, 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 pop. That's the other thing that you need to know as a journalist a lot of the times. I want to talk about a specific thing that I think really affected me, especially when you're in the limelight, the public limelight. Imposter syndrome, it's so real. Or self-doubt. It's so real because you're in front of people and people expect you to always say the right thing. Every single time. You have the right facts, you have words. So sometimes you're like, am I saying the right thing? Am I making a mistake here? You know, that self-doubt really creeps in a lot, you know, and you start doubting, okay, am I able to deliver this? But, you know, with time, I've been able to work around it again by preparing, by being knowledgeable, and by being, by basically knowing the space that you're in.
Fathiya, journalism comes with a lot of activities. One of it is traveling.
Yes.
Have you traveled a lot during your tenure as a journalist?
I've been traveling. I've been traveling for stories.
Which location, which is the best place that you have covered the best story? And when you remember that particular place, and you tend to ruminate about it and you say, that place, I have given a best story about that place, and people have changed their perspective about that particular place?
Let's just say one of my first stories when I was working at the BBC was in Ethiopia. So at the BBC, we had a show called Fact Finder. It was a show about fake news and misinformation. So that was our niche. So the story I was going to do was about 2 doctors who were killed because of misinformation in a certain village. That's what the article was saying. So I wanted to go on the ground and see, did this really happen? Why were they killed? Let me talk to the people, right? And so I got to Ethiopia in Addis, but the village I was going to was called Gondar. So from Addis, we flew to Bahir Dar, which is another town. And then from there, we took another car all the way to Gonji, a very small village. Very nice to look at. Honestly, Africa is very pretty in terms of it being so rural and natural, right? So we went to this particular village and I got to talk to the principal of the school, because these 2 doctors who were coming to this school, they were just talking to young children about you need to be vaccinated and things like that. But then the people around there thought, no, what are you coming to give our children? They had this kind of misinformation about what the doctors were bringing. Now, the doctors also had a lab researcher with them, right? So these villagers came and attacked them in the school, you know, and said, what are you doing with this vaccine? What do you want to do to our girls? That kind of misinformation that has been said for a very long time, right? And so they drug these 3, the 2 doctors and the lab technician, to a specific place just near the village, and they start hitting them. They kill the 2 doctors, but the lab technician or the lab researcher survived. And so the story was following, okay, what really happened and what led to that? So we started by talking to the lab researcher, who was very scared to speak, but he gave his side of the story. I went to the school, I talked to the principal, I talked to some villagers, I talked to the inspector. So it was an opportunity to understand the story fully and look at the impact misinformation has, even in small villages like that particular village in Ethiopia, which I think was a very impactful story that I'm very proud of. And it was a way of educating even people in Ethiopia about the impact of misinformation and what it can do.
Oh, nice story.
Yeah.
What are the sum of misconception people have against Africa, and how can we counter that particular narrative?
That's very interesting because, perception is reality, right?
Yeah.
How we perceive ourselves starts with us, right? And then what we put out in the world is how we're showing the world how we are. For a very long time in media spaces, right? African stories that have been told from a very negative perspective. Africa is poor. People are hungry. A lot of children are dying, which is factual. It's true. That's happening. But when I look at the flip side, sometimes in other countries around the world, for instance, talking about poverty, I saw a certain documentary and it was mentioning a European country that I don't want to mention. It was mentioning a European country that has a lot of homeless people on the streets. Do you ever see that? No. But that's the reality. But what happens is media has been framed in a way that now you tell that story, you come to Africa and say, look at the homeless people in streets of Africa, look at the people who are, And I think now it's our role as journalists, especially African journalists, to be able to sort of change that perception. If we want to really take like a position in the world of who we are and where we belong, then we can't keep dwelling on the negative stories and that negative misconceptions. So we need to tell our stories from a positive optimism kind of level, but balance it at the same time. Do you understand? And not necessarily stay in that negative perspective. Yeah.
And Fathiya, since you have a lot of experience in journalism, how does censorship affect journalism, and how did it affect you as an individual? Censorship, maybe by a government or by a strong, robust body, which don't want the news to reach to the audience directly, and they try to infiltrate.
I mean, I would say, of course it happened, I think, but when it happened locally here, when there was that media gag order and there was blackout of the media, at that time I was not in local media, I was in international. But you see, censorship just, it's not a good thing in itself. Media is the voice of the people. That is the whole point of media, you know, putting things out there, questioning governments and things like that. So when there is censorship that has been put in place, that means you're denying people their voice. So it's quite unacceptable, to be honest, right? And we've seen that not only happening briefly here in Kenya, but also around Africa. A lot of African countries, by the way, media doesn't operate the way it operates in Kenya. Here, I think we have freedom of speech, we have freedom of expression.
Yeah.
But when you go to other African countries, it's completely different, because even the state TV, okay, cannot necessarily say exactly how things are happening, because the government is controlling that narrative. Because remember, perception is reality. So censorship definitely favors the government, and it's not a good thing to do in any particular country.
And how do you keep up with this adapting environment, whether in a media perspective, whether in an economy perspective, whether in a health perspective? You see, when you are a journalist, you have to be adaptable person. You have to be a person who possesses a lot of discipline, because you can be called at any time.
100%.
Yeah. And if you're not someone who is adapting to this, it can affect a lot of things. How do you adapt to that?
So do you mean, how do I adapt to the changes of what's happening in the industry, or as a person?
Both.
Okay.
In an industry and as a person.
I mean, I think, like we talked about earlier, the media landscape is really changing. People are not watching TV as much anymore.
If you ask me now, I don't remember the last time I sat down and I watched a mainstream media. I normally get all my news, on X platform actually.
But you might be getting that from a mainstream media platform, no? Let's say let's say if it's a credible story that you want to know what's really happening, you'll probably let's check Citizen, let's check ATN, let's check NTV, let's check BBC, let's check Al Jazeera, because they're more credible.
Yeah.
But you'll check it from that platform as compared to watching TV, right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I think that's one way we are adapting as media now. We're really in that social media space. We're really moving into a digital world, you know. And I think as an individual, how I've been able to adapt is now I'm not necessarily on air, on camera a lot. But since I like talking about what's happening around the world, I've started doing videos on TikTok. I think you've seen some of my videos,
Yeah,
right?
I've seen some of them.
Yeah, and things that I'm passionate about, like Africa, the right things to know about the continent, or even news that are happening, I've adapted now. I do them on TikTok. Which, if you ask me as someone who's been in traditional media, I'd be like, no, it's killing my credibility as a journalist, but it's not. So one of the ways I'm adapting is getting on those platforms as an individual and talking to people and engaging with people from those platforms.
Between TikTok and mainstream media, which you work for, I mean the BBC, the CGTN and others, which particular platform has made you reach a lot of people?
Yeah, that's a tricky question.
Yeah, because nowadays a lot of people, sincerely speaking, are on TikTok. It's a platform which is booming, and the developed worlds they are discussing on how maybe to completely shut it down, because a lot of people are using it to transmit. We could see what is happening in Gaza directly, but the mainstream media does not have that. So I believe TikTok is more influential, and a lot of people are in there. How has it helped you?
I mean, yes, right now TikTok is a big platform. We can agree everybody is there, just always constantly watching information.
Yeah.
But I want to remind you that what we do as media houses or being in a mainstream media is we give you accurate information in terms of the content that's out there. Anybody, like I told you, can record anything and say anything online, but we sift through the noise or sift through the information that's given to give you more accurate information, right? So yes, anybody can say anything on TikTok, but it's up to you, okay, to check from a credible source, like the BBC, the CGTN, the Al Jazeera and all that. But also, you see, it's a responsibility for me. TikTok is my page as Fathiya, but it's me, Fathiya, as a journalist. So I make sure also the content that I bring on TikTok is accurate. it's different from what anybody else would say. I'd give you a backstory, I'd give you some sort of verdict in a way. Yeah, that's how I see it from my perspective when it comes to that platform.
What is the touchstone that a media industry uses? Is it integrity? Is it honesty? Is it transparency? Is it credibility? Which one is the tenet or belief that you must espouse as a journalist for you to maybe prosper?
I believe as a media house or as a media platform, public interest comes first. We're about the people, right? It's all about the people. So it's not about what we want as journalists. It's not about the government. It's about the people first. So public interest comes first. Secondly, truth. Truth. We try, from our perspective, to tell stories from a balance, like I keep saying, and a truthful manner. We've looked from both sides, and this is exactly what's happening.
Yeah.
Credibility is a must, right? And credibility means you're coming from a point of you're giving the right information, the accurate information. So credibility, integrity, impartiality. There's something called impartiality and objectivity. That means we're telling a story, not being biased on any particular side. You're leaning on any side. No. You try your best to be at the central, to be neutral. Those are our core values as journalists.
As a journalist, everybody knows you are a public figure. How do you protect your mental well-being and your peace?
That's interesting. I mean, I don't see myself as a public figure. That's the interesting thing. Let's start with that. For me, I'm doing my job
people
as a journalist.
People surround you, see you as that.
Yes. Now, people around me, of course, they know me from that perspective. But I wouldn't say it gives me pressure, because for me as Fathiya, what you see is what you get. Like, I will just do my thing and I will move normally. Okay, so I wouldn't say necessarily it gives me a lot of pressure or has given me a certain type of pressure. But even when I was a news anchor at KTN, of course, people were expecting to see me in a certain standard, to look a certain way. And there's always that expectation from people, right? Which is not necessarily a bad thing. But if it's causing me my mental health, then I wouldn't engage in certain things. Yeah. So as Fathiya, I'm never pressured to drive a certain type of car. I'm not pressured to dress some type of way. I'm not, I don't get pressure to, for instance, even remove my hijab. This is one thing I really pride myself in as a journalist, that I wear my hijab, and so yes, of course, people would push you, maybe maybe you'll be looking pretty. We need to see that. But I try not to allow such pressures to get to me. Yeah.
And how do you feel as a journalist when these public figures, maybe politicians, use outrageous words to address some particular people? For example, like Donald Trump, he was using garbage to address Somali community. How do you feel when you hear those sentiments or those words as a journalist?
I mean, it's unacceptable, even from a human point of view, leave alone me as a journalist, it is unacceptable.
Yeah.
That's point number one. As a human being, you cannot even take such words, right? But sometimes I think it speaks on someone's character, right? Like, I'm not saying specifically Donald Trump, but even like political leaders that you're talking about, it just really speaks on who they really are.
Yeah.
So if he says garbage, as a journalist, I'm not going to cover that word and say that he said garbage, he said garbage.
Yeah.
That's truth, right? Yeah. So you address it as is, this is what he said. But of course, for someone who is in such position, sometimes it's kind of just not good in itself, because what are you telling people as a leader? What kind of words are you using? Again, comes back to who you are as a leader. Yeah.
We have known you from and you have shared your story from a journalism perspective. But here, when we come up to your life skills, I mean, what's your hobbies?
Oh my God. Can I say sometimes I feel like I'm so boring?
Yeah.
But not really. Hobbies specifically, let's just say one of the ways that I unwind usually is gym. I go to the gym at least 3 times a week in the morning. So I call it a hobby because it's something I do constantly consistently. I love being in nature.
3 times a week, why not 5?
At least 3 times. I'm saying at least 3 times because there are days I do more. And there are days, I mean, we're human beings. I'm just like, I'm not feeling my best today. But yeah, so gym is one of the things I do. I love being in nature. I really like hiking, but believe me, this year I've only done it once, but I loved it. So I love hiking too. I love going to the movies alone, actually. I really enjoy going to the movies by myself. In an empty theater, it's my happy place.
If you could not become a journalist and you are given a chance to maybe pursue another course, which course will you pursue?
Law.
Law. Why
Definitely.
law?
Like I told you,
Why law?
I thought I'd be a lawyer because I wouldn't say I like arguing, but I like having facts. I like having conversations. I like the back and forth. I like engaging with people mentally.
Also challenging others. Maybe.
And challenging others and sort of putting people on the spot. Yeah. I enjoy that too. So yeah, maybe I could have been a lawyer. Never know.
Do you have a routine when you wake up, or you're just someone who wake up and then do whatever which is at your disposal? Or you have a routine that I wake up at 5, go to gym at 9, have my breakfast at 10 a.m.
Yeah.
Do you have that kind of a life?
If I was to be honest with you, my actual routine is very simple. I'm up in the morning, pray of course, Fajr in the morning, head to the gym. After the gym, I go to the office, spend most of my day in the office up until the time I finish, and then head back home. Previously when I was in school, it was work, school, home. So that's how my routine usually just looks. It's very simple. I don't do too much. Maybe step out once in a while with my sisters because we're kind of a huge family. And I hang out with my sisters a lot. So yeah.
Happy birthday. I have seen you. You were celebrating your birthday. As Sango Insight, we want to wish you a happy birthday.
Thank you very much.
Fathiya, how is your relationship with money? Sango Insight is a channel whereby it indulges more on money, more on entrepreneurship, more on finance. What is your relationship with money? Are you a person who is frugal, or are you a person who maybe is a spendthrift?
I used to think I'm a spendthrift at some point in my life, but then I decided to do some financial literacy classes. So I joined Centonomy. I don't know if you know Centonomy.
Oh, I know.
So I did Centonomy.
Yes,
I really enjoyed these classes. Yeah. So I did Centonomy for 3 months, graduated. I really wanted to learn financial literacy. So that really helped me in terms of like planning my money, what to use, what's essential, what not to use. So those classes really helped me. I think I did it in 2022 actually. I think it was 2022. So I did those classes for 3 months. I really wanted to learn.
Was it a physical class or what? It was
online? We went for some physical classes. We did some physical classes, but others were online, Saturdays. But I really, really enjoyed just learning things and learning from that perspective.
What are some of the lessons you took from there and then you exposed it on your life and it helped you? I
think, the usual. Pay yourself first. 100%. I definitely agree. Pay yourself first.
But entrepreneurs don't pay themselves first. They pay everything.
Yeah, but I think, don't you think it's good to have a bit of savings somewhere? A bit of some money somewhere? Yeah. I mean, it's not necessarily coming out as investments, but put some money aside, And then one of the things that we learned in class was how to break down how you spend money. So we had like A, B, C. Like, for instance, the most essential, it's like how you're dealing with bills. Which one is the most important one, the most essential one, then which one is for entertainment, which one is for this and that. So that, the way we used to break A, B, C into how we use the money really helped me in sort of categorizing how I'm spending my money, right? So that's been a plus for sure. One thing that I'm currently still trying to learn is the Islamic way of investment. Because of course in Islam, interest is not allowed.
Yes.
And so something that I think is lacking, and maybe I can bring it to your attention, and I think is, I don't think there's a lot of information when it comes to Islamic finance. Yes, we have Islamic banks and all that, but we don't have content really telling us how we should be spending our money Islamically. Where do you invest Islamically? Okay? Can be just for everyone, but also for women. Where do you invest? Where do you start? there are different organizations, whether it's a couple or whatnot, and they have all these small things that they're doing. SIB, Najah, like, how do you learn and how do you make money out of such investments? You know, I think that's something that's really lacking, but I'm on my way of just learning that process.
What advice do you have for those people who don't put a lot of weight on learning financial literacy?
You're losing out. You're losing out. I think financial literacy is so important, and not only to people who work. Even if you don't work, it's so important to manage your finances.
Yeah, because I've seen it affects a lot of people. It affects families.
Yes.
You know, I mean, if it's not the first thing, the second thing which causes a lot of divorces is people don't have financial capacity. And if there is no financial well-being, then the marriage will be in turmoil.
I think, okay, I'm not married yet, but from some of the stories that I hear, I think also people put on certain financial pressures on themselves or on the partner, or, you know, you want a certain lifestyle. You want your sofas to be changed every single month, and you want the high end, you know, you want to take trips every 3-4 months to a very expensive country. Does that make sense? You know, those are things that I think people need to consider. Don't put such pressures on yourself. You need to drive a certain car. Why? Because that one for car, I don't understand personally. I'm like, it's to take you from one place to another, right? So people shouldn't pressure themselves financially, but learn what's important and what's not important. And even in a partnership setup, I think that's where you sit down together and you plan together. You say, okay, so this is where we're going to put our money. This is what we need to do here and then. Things like that, I think, is important.
Oh, that is so profound. Fathiya, as we wind up, what advice do you have for young girls who want to pursue journalism and they want to become a journalist like you?
Educate yourself. Study. Go to school. Learn. Like I said, now everybody who has a microphone thinks they can be a journalist, which is fine. But I think what makes you different is the kind of knowledge that you have and what you output. So go and educate yourself. Learn what's happening. Number 2, journalism is not about the fun, the games, or being famous. If you come into the industry thinking that you want to be famous, then chances are that you might not stay there for long, actually. You've got to be passionate. You want to tell people stories. You want to, you know, highlight issues that are happening around your area. So you've got to be passionate from a good perspective, you know. That's what I tell you, like, just have your right focus in, and then the rest flows.
What legacy do you hope to leave in Africa's storytelling and media?
Wow.
Fathiya.
I mean, over time, I want to change the narrative people have about Africa. Like I said, yes, there are issues, there are challenges we have, but how about to talk about the strengths we have? I think a lot of the times, even things that I mentioned on my TikTok, for instance, is the minerals that, for instance, DRC has. It's one of the countries that not stable up until now. Specific areas, people are fighting, people are dying. It's one of the richest countries in the world. So how about as an African, I tell that story from that perspective and change that mentality of it's always war there. There is minerals and maybe some people are exploiting it. So how can we come together and work around it? So I think it's about changing the narrative. And I'm hoping I'm able to do that over time, sort of educate people and change their thoughts. Yeah.
Wow, that is so well put. Fathiya, we thank you for your time.
Thank you.
And I believe when the audiences or the fans of Sango Insight, when they watch your episode, they will gain a lot of knowledge, a lot of insights, a lot of information, a lot of ideas about journalism and how to put good stories about Africa. Thank you so much, and we hope to see you soon.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for the invite.
Thank you.